What's going on, guys? Chris Barner here, Overtime Athletes. For today's video, what I want to do is I want to go over the 3 most basic fundamental mechanical drills for top speed, right? How do we teach top speed? These drills I use from our youth all the way up to our professional levels, and I actually think that most athletes and coaches get them wrong. And the reason being is because they don't have the intent. We've all performed these drills, but they don't understand the how and why of what they're doing and have the intent in the actual drill, right? So let's go ahead and review them. So number 1, all we're essentially doing with these drills is we're firing up the nervous system. So I usually think of them as almost like a neural prep drill that we do during our preparatory phase. We also do them from a more youth perspective to be able to start teaching technique when it comes to top speed mechanics. The thing that I'm looking for is having, again, that intent in the drill. What are we doing? Why are we doing it? So that we can then get a better stimulus when we're performing it, or we can overall perform it faster to overall enhance that actual movement. So what we're doing is we're actually breaking down the cyclical-like motion in top speed when the athlete's torso's upright, right? And they're performing like they're pedaling a bicycle or performing that cycle. Key factors in that is when we go to take off, right? We have a fast recovery phase into drive phase, and then we're touching down right underneath the hips. Some athletes spend a long swooping motion back here. Some athletes, it cuts off their knee drive, right? So it shortens their stride, right? So that now they're not optimizing stride length. There's a myriad of different factors. There could be things where they don't stay in dorsiflexion with their actual foot and ankle, causing them to stay longer in that recovery phase. So there's a lot of different problems that the athletes can have. So by breaking down these 3 simple drills, we can effectively start to promote or enhance that cyclical-like motion. So the first one that we're gonna go through is what we call our high knee, or also known as our piston run, right? And this is gonna be your basic high knee run that we've seen plenty of times over. We do it in our dynamic warm-up, but we do this with intent, with speed. This is the old saying, train fast to get fast. So what I'm looking for the athlete to do is be torso upright, right? I want the chin essentially on a shelf. I just want them relaxed in their upper half, being able to get good arm action. And what I'm gonna ask the athlete to do for the first series is I'm gonna ask them to focus on their hip flexors, and I want them to pop their thigh, right, to about knee level or to hip level. So knee is about hip level and the ankle stays cocked, and they are essentially coming right back down at the ground. So they're actually performing more of a stabbing-like motion, right, to be able to pop that. Now, from a neural prep, the intent that I'm looking for on this first one is I'm having them focus purely in on their hip flexors with their mind, and I want them to pop that thigh high, right? And the other cue that I give them is I don't want them to beat up the ground, right? So I actually want them to imagine that they're running on ice and they don't want to essentially break the ice, right? So I don't want to hear their feet. I want them soft on the ground. And what this does is it gets us really fired up with the actual hip flexors. So like I said, from a youth perspective, I'm looking more on the motion and the technique, making sure they're upright, making sure they have good arm habits, making sure they're getting the knee up to hip level. On the pro side, we're training it extremely fast. I'm making sure they stab down and they're able to fire up those hip flexors as fast as they possibly can. So that's gonna be your high knee first series. Your second series, where I usually follow up with a couple, is now it's like I want to do the same thing, but I want to hear you on the ground. So what does that do? That changes the intent. That changes the intent from the hip flexors to the hip extenders, right? So now their glutes have to attack back down at the ground. Again, striking the ball of foot underneath the hip and being able to strike back down at that ground by more focusing with the mind on the extensors, the thing that's going to extend the hip. So there's 2 series there, same movement, different intentions. The next drill we're gonna go into is going to be our basic butt kick. Now I see a lot of common mistakes made with this butt kick and what we're actually trying to work. So same thing we're trying to do, we're gonna perform that butt kick. First mistake that I see a lot of athletes make is they keep this upper limb completely vertical or perpendicular with the ground. So what happens is that upper limb never travels up, they butt kick, they fire up their hamstrings, but they lack flexing the hip flexor at the same time as their hamstrings firing up. So we want 3 points of flexion. So we want our hip, so our thigh has to pop, right? We raise, we smash our hamstring with our calf, and we keep our ankle flexed as well. So we want to see all 3 flex and stab straight down at the same time. What I tell the athletes from an intention standpoint is 2 things. Make sure that that thigh travels up, right? Knee to hip level or just under, and make sure they're focused purely on the hamstring on their mind, trying to smash that hamstring with their calf as opposed to kicking their butt. Because what I'm trying to do from the youth level, again, promote mechanics. From the professional level, what I'm looking for is I'm actually looking for them to really fire up their hamstrings. Some of those, even from a mechanical standpoint, don't get that recovery phase fast. So after takeoff, can that athlete rapidly flex or triple flex all 3 of those joints? After they've performed that and we've really fired up the hamstrings, we take it into the next progression. As you can see, each one of these is a progression. We go from here to hamstring to now what we do is called a step over run. So a step over run is gonna be performing that same action we just performed with the butt kick, promoting that good quick recovery, right? But now the athlete is going to actually step over the opposite knee. So the athlete is gonna come here and they're gonna butt kick, and usually what I tell them to do is pull down at the ground. So the butt kick is a stab, the step over is basically a claw back at the turf. What are we working here? From a mechanical standpoint, can we teach that athlete, right, after rapid flexion to then extend and release the hamstring? So if you think about it, the hamstring has to relax. So for it to come down and pull, right, it can't be contracted. It has to be able to come down, swipe, and claw at the turf. So there's a couple things, like I said, from a cueing standpoint that I look for. I tell them instead of stab on the butt kick, I tell them to pull. Some of the guys have an aha moment with that. Some of the guys, I tell them to cycle over. With some of my youth kids, I tell them, imagine you're pedaling a bicycle, right? So you're creating that cyclical-like motion. For some of them, what I'm telling them to do is just be able to release the hamstring and, like I said, pull down. So it just depends on the factor, but the big thing is, can I rapidly flex from recovery into drive, and then before I touch down, right, I'm able to extend or lengthen that hamstring. So rapid stretch, rapid release, and lengthen, right? And that's the step over. And then last one, which I'll do for a bonus, which will always follow up this series, is gonna be that step over to stride. Step over to stride is essentially gonna be those same step over drills. And then as we progress through yardage, the athlete starts to give a little bit more force and starts to open up their stride until they're into a more top speed run. And that just allows us to integrate all those drills back into what they do. And then we usually wrap up the session in some form of buildup where they're in that top speed buildup. Here's 3 very simple drills that we all perform, but you can see from the youth level up to the professional level, I still utilize these. I think they're great for turning on the nervous system, really enhancing it, and then also being able to break down and compartmentalize those different motions, right, of the actual cycle during top speed and overall enhance them. Not only does it promote better backside and front side mechanics and clean up any inefficiencies that they have in that motion, right, but it also allows them to apply force better, so that not only does stride frequency sometimes get a little bit better, but it also promotes stride length because they're creating a more cyclical-like motion by gaining more ground. So these are all things that overall enhance an athlete's top speed. I hope this helps. If you're interested in more speed training, check out the link down below.